So it is 6:31. Is there a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Great, thank you. Mary, please open up the voting.
Oh, I forgot to log in. Wait.
We can do this. Aye.
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 Great, meeting is open. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome to the October 4th, 2021 Board of Education meeting. We will now proceed to section 3 of tonight's agenda, which is public input. If anyone is here from the public and they'd like to address the board and your questions or comments are addressed to the board, now would be the time. Raise your hand in the chat box and we can unmute you. You will then state your name and have 3 minutes. Let me see if there are any hands. In the attendees, I do not see any hands. Give it 1 more minute to see if there's anybody else. Okay, seeing or hearing no one, we will move on with tonight's agenda to the superintendent's report, section 5, item 5.1. Mr. Nichols.
Thanks, Brian. This evening, I'm just going to provide a quick update on the status with regard to Mass Hashemewett Park. This past Wednesday, we held our 3rd meeting. We've met on September 15th, 22nd, and the 29th with representatives from the park board and representatives from the school board. And thus far, the discussions have focused on plans for the improvement and or installation of fields that will service the sports that our students play. And those sports are baseball, softball, field hockey, soccer, and track. I guess you could throw cross country in there as well. And in addition, there have been discussions pertaining to walkways that are necessary for ADA compliance, seating, lighting, additional bathrooms, the refurbishment of the dugouts, additional storage, and any upgrades related to irrigation or electrical that are required to make those other improvements possible. So the meetings have gone very well thus far. The goal is to agree upon a capital improvement plan with the intention of bringing that to the voters sometime in the spring of 2022. And at the risk of being redundant, the discussions thus far I would characterize as very productive and cooperative and collegial. So we look forward to continuing to work with the park, and that's a status update.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Any board questions or comments with respect to that?
Thank you so much for the update, and it's good to hear that there's so much cooperation and progress being made. That's great. I'm just curious, your best estimate, do you think that before the end of the year we'll be ready to have a public discussion about some of the options we're looking at?
Hopefully. I don't want to speak on behalf of the park board, but you know, we're trying to move as quickly as we can because we have a timeline in mind. So if we can get our ducks in order prior to the date you suggested, I'm sure they would be amenable to that, participating in an update to the community with more specific information.
All right. And then can you just remind us, what is the date or around the date where we have to have it locked to give us enough time to publicize it before a vote in May?
Well, there's
like March.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, I think it's like a 60 or 90 day, but I have it on a timeline that bond counsel submitted to us.
Okay.
So the real goal for us is to try to agree upon a plan as soon as possible, because I didn't really want to go into great detail tonight, but there are some studies, some environmental studies that need to be done. And I'd rather discuss those in more detail when we've agreed upon some of the preliminary things that I referenced earlier.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, great. Moving on to section 6 of tonight's agenda, the administrator's report. Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, this evening, Miss Carriero, she was out sick today, so it's limited to Mr. Malone at the elementary school. So I'll leave it with you, Mr. Malone. Are you there, Mr. Malone?
You're muted.
I apologize.
That's right.
I'm out of practice with the Google Meet, but I'm very pleased to report that at the elementary school, our first month has gone very well. September closed out successfully. I think we got off to a great start, and I really just want to once again thank everybody for the teamwork and cooperation around all of our safety measures that we have in place. I think everybody's really doing their part to help one another stay healthy and keep school open and keep instruction in person. So that's been going very well. Now with October, a few highlights. We're entering into our Red Ribbon Workshop campaign. And for those that are not aware, the Red Ribbon campaign is done nationally in schools, and it's really focused on helping children of all grade levels, but at the elementary school, beginning to understand the dangers of drug and alcohol abuse. At the younger age levels, we really focus on speaking about making healthy choices every day of our lives. These discussions are led by our guidance counselor, Mrs. Grant, in conjunction with the classroom teachers. And I think it's always a very important workshop for the children. I'm happy to say that we are bringing back clubs, our after school and before school clubs, which are a great enrichment opportunity for the boys and girls. Will be offered once again, beginning in a couple of weeks, to our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. Those that are interested will sign up in the coming days. And then we're hoping to begin on October 18th. And these will run, as I said, before the session begins each day, and also after school on a schedule that's determined by the leaders of those workshops. And lastly, as we look far ahead to the end of this month, we are planning for the Halloween parade to come back. So we'll be having the parade down Main Street on Friday, the 29th. So the boys and girls will get dressed up, and we'll hope, if everything goes well, to celebrate Halloween as a community.
Great, thanks, Mr. Malone.
That would be great.
Ryan, do you want to see if there are any questions for Mr.
I
Malone?
would. Anyone from the board have any questions or comments for Mr. Malone? I think it's wonderful that we're getting the clubs back and having a return to some normalcy and getting that interaction, which is so important on the younger years. Any other board members? Okay, great. Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, just to follow up on Ms. Tice's question, and again, I don't want to go into great detail, but if we were to go out for a vote, and this is but if we were to settle on May 17th, then the requirement is that the board must direct the district clerk to publish the notice of bond referendum in the official school district newspapers at least 4 times, 7 weeks prior to the vote. The initial publications to be at least 45 days prior to that date of the vote, which would be April 2nd for a May 17th, 22 vote. And then I briefly referenced the State Environmental Quality Review Act, and that would have to be completed prior to that time as well. So those are the 2 significant timeline issues that we would have to adhere to structure-wise. Again, if we agreed on a May 17th vote. And again, that's up in the air because we might elect to go sooner or later, depending on how things evolve over the next month or two.
Thanks, Jeff. Any board questions with that or follow up, Chris? That would answer your question, Chris?
Sorry,
Oop, you're muted, Chris. Chris, you're muted.
thank you. That was helpful.
Great.
And if we've gotten, I apologize if the board received this and I don't remember, but if the board hasn't received that timeline that you received from council, if you could forward it to the board, that would be great. And if you did already, then mea culpa.
Great. Before we move on to the consent agenda item, Mary, I would just ask that you remove item 7.15 from the consent agenda item, please. Or make a note that it will be removed, and any action taken under the consent agenda will not include item 7.15.
7.15. Okay.
Correct.
At this time, I'm not able to remove it, but I will make a note of it.
Correct. It's not part of what the motion I'm going to ask the board for at this time.
So you're withdrawing 7.15.
That's correct.
Okay.
With that said, is there a motion for consent agenda items 7.2 through 7.38, excluding 7.15?
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? Okay, great. Thank you. Mary, please open up the voting.
Okay. I don't see Alex's.
He's not at the
Fine
meeting.
here, Mary. I'm a yes. Oh, here
Oh,
we
there
go.
he is. That's
Okay.
fine.
All right, great. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Moving on to discussion items. We don't have anything scheduled. I would just ask if any board member would like anything to be scheduled at an upcoming meeting. Now would be the time to let me know and we can work to schedule those items. Okay. Seeing or hearing nobody, we will move on to public input section number 2. If anybody is here from the public that would like to address the board, now would be the time to do that. You can do that by either writing a question into the chat room or raising your hand, and we will unmute you to address the board. Is there anybody here that wishes to take advantage of public input number 2? Okay, I am looking in the attendees and the panelists, and I do not see any hands raised. Okay. Unless there's anything else a board member would like to bring up, I would move on to section 10 of tonight's agenda. Before I do that, is there anything anyone would like to raise? Okay. With that, is there a, for the public watching, I'm going to ask the board if there is a motion to go into executive sessions for the purposes I will state shortly. If that motion carries and the board goes into executive session, the board would come out of executive session for the sole purpose of ending the public meeting. No action would be taken by the board at the conclusion of the executive session. With that being said, is there a motion to convene into executive session to discuss collective bargaining, unit negotiations, contracts, litigation, and the employment of a particular person?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Great. Mary, please open up the voting.
Okay. I just need Ryan. That's unanimous.
Great. Members of the board and anyone invited to executive session, there is a link that has been sent to you. It is in your school inbox. It was sent at 6:15. Please log off of this link and into that link, and I will see you there. For the public, have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Night.
Goodbye.
Right.